Now why don't we read from another section of Swami Tadatmanandaji's book, The Roar of the Ganges, which is a river in India, also known as the Ganga. Here we recount Swami Tadatmanandaji's journey from New Jersey, New York to India, Rishikesh, where he has reached the Swami Dayananda Ashram, and there, after long travels, being jet-lagged, he went to sleep. And now we'll see what happens when he wakes up. After dozing for a couple of hours, I was awakened by someone rapping at the door. "Mark? Are you there, Mark?" A voice called out, "It's me, Vijay." "Vijay?" For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then he knocked again. I jumped up from the cot and opened the door. My old friend stood there, smiling. "You are surprised to see me?" he asked. For a moment, I stared in disbelief. Then I stretched out my arms to embrace him. Vijay and I met 10 years ago on my first trip to India. Since then, we had enjoyed many months of study and travel together, traversing the entire length of India, from the Himalayas to the southern peninsula, where the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and Indian Ocean all meet on the sandy beaches of Kanyakumari. Vijay's beard was now streaked with grey, and his stomach had enlarged somewhat since the last time we met. He wore robes similar to Swami Sudhananda's, a dhoti and upper cloth, except Vijay's were white in color. White signified that he was a Brahmachari, a spiritual student, a status roughly equivalent to a novice monk in a Christian monastery. Vijay was still grinning as he sat down in the chair. He addressed me with his usual heavy accent. "I was wanting to meet you when you arrived, but I could not reach Ashram on time. I am so happy to be meeting you again. All these days I am wondering, how is my Brahmachari friend in America?" Vijay had recently come from an ashram near Coimbatore in South India, where he attended a 3-year residential course, comparable to a study in a Christian seminary. Together with 50 other students, he had undergone an in-depth program of meditation, scriptural study, and Sanskrit instruction. The course was taught by Swami Dayananda, the founder of both the Coimbatore and Rishikesh ashrams. Years before, I had attended a similar course taught by Swami Dayananda at his third ashram in Pennsylvania's Monaco Mountains. Vijay had come to the Rishikesh ashram to continue his study and meditation. And hello, Auntie. Hello, Amanda. I'm doing well, thank you. What? You came here for more studies? I teased. Didn't you get enough in the 3-year course? You know what it is like, Mark. So many years of meditation and study are necessary. Yes, I said with a laugh. It's good that we are not in a hurry. Vijay and I were kindred souls. Even though we were raised in dissimilar cultures on opposite sides of the world, we felt like brothers. Our lives had many parallels. We had enjoyed successful careers before setting them aside to pursue our spiritual callings. We had both studied Vedanta and Sanskrit under the guidance of Swami Tadatmananda, and both of us were presently tramping our way along the path of enlightenment, the path that had brought us together many times before and had now led us both to Rishikesh. Our personalities were different in many ways, but we shared a tendency to be overly critical. Mostly, we were critical of ourselves. We frequently discussed what we saw as our weaknesses, and sought each other's advice for emotional and spiritual growth. We also tended to be overly critical of others, particularly spiritual students and teachers. Hello, John Simon. We knew our observations might be mistaken, but we nevertheless found ourselves disappointed by people from time to time. Maybe our standards were too high. We didn't think so. Vijay was ruthless in his pursuit of truth and felt free to question everything. He would not accept a teaching merely because it was traditional. Yet, he was no iconoclast. He had no desire to spurn conventions merely on principle. He felt deep reverence for the ancient traditions and teachings, even when he could not fully accept them. Hello, Nick Vance. Each time our paths crossed, Vijay and I caught up on recent adventures, mostly tales about our latest successes and failures. The last time we met was over 2 years ago, when I had come after completing my studies in the 3-year course in Pennsylvania. So, you became manager of the Pennsylvania ashram, Vijay remarked. Why are you getting stuck doing managing? I thought you would go back to California for enjoying sunshine and beaches and mountains. I never planned to get so involved with the ashram, I replied. When I first came as a student, I didn't know what to expect. I came for study and meditation, not for communal life. I even worried that the ashram life might be too uncomfortable for me. But I found that life in a community of spiritual seekers suited me. We shared the same values and goals, and I enjoyed our group practice of meditating, studying, and working together. I did go back to California for a few months, but then Swami Tadatmananda asked if I would volunteer to manage the ashram. It wasn't a paid position, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to live in a spiritual community and do something meaningful. My years of study there meant a lot to me, and I wanted to help others enjoy the same. There are many ashrams here in India, but there are few places in the United States where seekers can find an ideal environment for spiritual pursuit. But, Vijay interrupted, why are you being manager? With so much work, how can you find time for meditation, study, and teaching? In ashram, you should be teaching, not managing. Vijay looked at me reproachfully. Because of our mutual trust and candidness, I was not surprised by his reaction. In fact, I had indeed been struggling in my role as manager, but not for the reasons Vijay had in mind. "You're right about one thing," I said. "It's a lot of work, much more than I expected. I find time to read and meditate, but not as much as I would like. I began to do some teachings, but most of my time goes in running the ashram. So I try to use my work as a spiritual practice, as karma yoga. But it has really been a struggle to maintain a spiritual attitude towards all the work, especially when it gets overwhelming." I paused. The truth was that I had become exhausted from working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, with few breaks for the past 2 years. Overseeing the retreat programs, faculties, fundraising, and a volunteer staff of 20 was too much for one person. But at the same time, there was no other help available. I felt pleased to be of service to others, but sometimes I felt crushed by the responsibilities. I was both relieved and grateful to leave it behind and come to India. I described my difficulties to Vijay and reflected, "At least it has been a time of learning for me. I was trained to design computer systems, not to run an ashram, so had to learn a lot. It made me grow in ways I never expected. It really was a great opportunity for growth." Vijay laughed. I momentarily felt annoyed by his inappropriate response. "What?" I asked. "What seems so funny to you?" "You are sounding so American," Vijay chided me. "Every time you are struggling, you say it is an opportunity for growth." I protested, explaining how the role of manager forced me into situations where I had to grow, especially in dealing with so many people: students, staff members, visitors, donors. Each of them had different needs, different expectations about the ashram, different demands. Conflicts arose continually, and it was my responsibility to resolve them. The manager's chair was truly a hot seat. Sometimes frustration or anger built up inside me. But as ashram manager, I needed to be completely supportive of others. So, if I was going to resolve their conflicts, I had to be free from conflict myself. I had to learn to manage myself before I could manage others. Vijay frowned in concentration as I spoke. Then a gong rang out from the courtyard. "Tea is ready," he said. "Chalo, let's go." Stepping on to the veranda, I surveyed the familiar ashram compound. My life had changed a lot since my last visit here. My transition from computer engineer to ashram student and then to ashram manager was as surprising to me as it was to my friends and family. And now, the events unfolding in my life had brought me here in preparation for another transition, one of tremendous significance, just 2 weeks away. On a table outside the dining hall, a large urn of tea and stacks of stainless steel cups had been set out. Vijay handed me a cup, into which I poured some of the hot, thick concoction. The steel cup burnt my fingers as lips as I sipped gingerly. This sweet, milky tea called chai is the beverage of choice throughout North India. In time, I learned to like it. We walked towards the compound's far side where the Ganges flows below a retaining wall built to contain its waters when it swells with the monsoon rains. We sat there on one of the brightly painted benches, sipping our tea with the river and Himalayan foothills stretched out before us. I was eager to tell Vijay the reason for my visit and share my exciting news. Yet I felt uneasy, vaguely apprehensive. Was I afraid he might not approve? After I summoned my nerve and told him, Vijay exclaimed, "Badhai ho! Congratulations!" I knew one day he would become a sannyasi, or renunciate. Now you can get out of Ashram Management so you can study and teach more. And hello, Ambrosia. I had to explain to Vijay that I would continue to bear responsibility for the ashram's operations after my return. I could not abandon that necessary job, nor did I want to. For me, becoming a sannyasi was not a means of escape. It was a conscious deepening of my commitment to spiritual growth. Managing the ashram would continue to be a major part of my spiritual practice, at least for the near future. In spite of my obligation to continue as manager, Vijay still felt that I was indeed taking a big step in the right direction. I was glad for his support and vote of confidence. In fact, he seemed far more convinced of the rightness of my decision than I. To Vijay, the decision was obvious. Anyone intensely devoted to spiritual pursuit would choose to become a sannyasi if possible. But he was born in a culture where becoming a sannyasi is not uncommon. Had I been born in India, my course of action would have been clear. But since that wasn't the case, I had to grapple with complex, cross-cultural issues before coming to this junction in my life. And those challenging issues were just a forerunner of what was to come. So, we finish the second chapter now. Well, the first chapter, but there was an introduction that we also read. Later on in this live, we may begin the next chapter called Ashram on the Ganges. But for now, we may pause our reading there and reflect back on the casual discussion between Swami Tadatmananda, or as he was known then, Mark, and his friend Vijay. How having a supportive friend such as Vijay is so important in our spiritual growth. Additionally, it seems as though Mark had made the decision to become a sannyasi, which is the next step after Brahmacharya, after student life, becoming a renunciant. It is not so uncommon to become a monk, especially in India, but it is for Westerners, such as Mark. We also had the theme of karma yoga expressed in his role as a manager at the ashram, how working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week was exhausting for free at that. But it was a kind of spiritual service. Now thank you for listening with me as we read that. And again, thank you, Sky Guardian, for sending this book of your Guru our way for us to read in the Sangha.